She ignored you, and in that instant the world seemed to stop for a second that hurt more than any words. There are silences that are not only heard, but felt like a cold blade piercing pride. Contempt is a cruel art. It kills without noise, humiliates without a gesture, destroys without a touch. Hatred at least screams. Hatred still confesses its importance. Indifference, no, it erases you from the other's map. And that is why Machiavelli would smile upon seeing your confusion and say, with strategic calm, whoever wishes to be loved without inspiring fear will inevitably be forgotten. This is where most fail. The natural impulse is to chase, justify, plead. Modern man believes that love is won through insistence, when in reality, it is lost through excessive presence. He who tries to explain silence has already lost the power of words. It's like trying to relight a drowned candle. The flame won't return, and the effort only reveals desperation. Machiavelli wouldn't see this contempt as an end, but as a battlefield. He would understand that attention is the most valuable currency of the century, and that whoever controls it dominates the game. Being ignored, therefore, isn't a punishment. It's an invitation to strategy. Power begins when you understand that the true board isn't the heart, it's the mind. The woman who ignores you observes. Even if she pretends not to see, she gauges your reaction. She wants to know if she has the power to break you. And when she realizes she can't, something in her begins to waver. Doubt is the beginning of the loss of control, and the man who understands this learns the supreme art of invisible presence, the one that makes itself felt without showing itself. The secret, Machiavelli would say, lies in timing. Those who respond quickly reveal dependence. Those who delay create anticipation. Those who disappear arouse curiosity, and those who return silently light the fire of mystery. It is in this cycle that power changes hands. There is no more refined revenge than authentic disinterest. Not feigned, but born of an understanding of one's own worth. The prince who begs for loyalty is weak. The man who begs for love is a slave. Both lose authority the moment they show need. True mastery is born of calm, of knowing how to wait, of becoming so complete that the other's absence becomes merely a detail, not a wound. So when she ignores you, don't react. Become silent too, but a living silence, one that builds, grows, and transforms. Invest in yourself. Take care of your appearance, your mind, your purpose. Show the world, without saying anything, that your orbit remains firm, perhaps even brighter without the presence that denied you attention. Because contempt, when properly interpreted, is an initiation. It's a chance to ascend, to stop being a subject to others' approval and become sovereign over yourself. In the game of absence, true power lies not in being remembered, but in no longer needing to be. When your silence begins to echo louder than any words, something shifts in the air. The absence that once hurt begins to gain a strange authority. People notice the way you walk, the unseeing gaze, the previously absent calm. Everything about you begins to communicate effortlessly. It's at this point that her contempt loses its power, because the void she left has now been filled by something that cannot be ignored: presence. And when that presence matures, the tables turn. It always do. She watches you without understanding. She wants to pinpoint the exact moment she lost control, the second she stopped being the center and became a spectator. Perhaps she sees you laughing with friends, hunched over a new project. Perhaps she notices that the brilliance that once depended on her now comes from somewhere else, from you. It's at that moment that Machiavelli would smile, because he knew power lies not in winning love, but in controlling the impact of your absence. In real life, this happens almost imperceptibly. One day she ignores your message, and you decide not to respond to the provocation. Another day she walks past you and waits for the look that never comes. Small gestures that become silent weapons. The human mind fears what it cannot foresee, and your silence begins to generate noise in its head. Questions arise. Has he forgotten me? Has he found someone? And what was indifference becomes unease. But there's a danger. Empty silence, the kind born of wounded pride, produces no power, only resentment. You need to fill it with action. Change your environment, improve your body, expand your mind. Swap the bar of melancholy for the gym. Lament for goals, regret for progress. The world must see that your time now has value. Machiavelli would say that a prudent prince does not lament an attack. He uses it to strengthen his walls. Man must act in the same way. Rejection is not punishment. It is raw material. There's a scene that repeats itself in the lives of many. One man ignores someone back, but angrily, and fails. Another falls silent but remains static and disappears. Only the third understands. Silence is a construction, not a refuge. He stops seeking the echo and becomes the sound. This is the turning point, the moment when pain transforms into aesthetics, into presence, into magnetism. The truth is simple and cruel. When a woman realizes your world no longer revolves around her, she begins to orbit yours. Mystery pulls her in, respect holds her captive, and desire is reborn where there was once boredom. It's human nature. The predictable doesn't fascinate. What gracefully withdraws, what leaves unanswered questions, what disappears to grow, provokes the kind of curiosity that fuels desire. But silence is only power when it comes from someone with substance. The silence of the weak is oblivion, that of the strong domination. Therefore, it's not enough to disappear. You must visibly evolve. Let the world see your metamorphosis. A new look, a haircut, a different way of walking, not as revenge, but as a consequence. Because when someone ignores you and you are reborn, power shifts. Machiavelli, observing everything from afar, would simply say, "Rejection is the hidden crown of those who know how to transform loss into authority. Every silence is a disguised arena. While the world believes you're standing still, you're arming yourself. Silence is an invisible training ground, where the mind learns to breathe without the oxygen of validation. It is there, in the gap between pain and calm, that the new man is born, the one who no longer asks for anything, just observes. And the more you observe, the more you realize that most live at war with their own emptiness. You understand that power lies not in filling the silence, but in making it your ally. It may never return, and suddenly, that no longer matters. Because true triumph is not winning the other back, but in no longer needing them to return. But why is it so difficult to let go of those who despise us? Why does the ego insist on asking for one last chance, one last word, one last look? The answer is simple and cruel. The ego wants to close the story with victory. It cannot bear the unfinished. However, greatness lies precisely in leaving the unfinished open, in not seeking explanations where fate has already written its final point. Machiavelli would smile at this silent renunciation and say, "The most absolute control is that of the one who needs to prove nothing. The man who does not seek to be understood becomes feared, and the feared, paradoxically, is the most respected." It is at this point that your absence becomes a myth. She ignores you and, in doing so, creates a narrative about you. But, as she imagines you, you transform. You are no longer the same man she rejected. You have become unknown. And the unknown is what attracts desire most. Power shifts its axis. Now it is you who inhabits her unconscious, not as a memory, but as an enigma. And the enigma is a sophisticated form of presence. So I ask, what if your true power lies precisely in not wanting to be remembered? What if the pinnacle of freedom is the moment when her name no longer changes the rhythm of your breathing? When you reach this point, you realize that mastery is not a throne, but a state of mind. Self-control is the only power that cannot be lost, the only one independent of the will of others. The man who masters his own emotions is like fire. He does not bend, he only changes shape. She'll begin to wonder why you don't pursue her, why you didn't react, why you seem so good without explanation. These questions corrode more than any absence. They are subtle cracks in the wall of pride. Doubt creeps in, silently, like water seeping through stone, and begins to work for you. The mistake would be to try to speed up the process, because power isn't displayed, it lets itself be felt. The true conqueror doesn't make noise. He simply exists with such force that the world reorganizes around his presence. But how far does this calm go? How far can one remain impassive in the face of provocation? The answer lies not in defeating the other, but in dissolving the game. When you stop playing, the board loses its meaning. And that's where Machiavelli would become a poet. Because understanding power is also understanding detachment. The woman who ignored you is not your enemy. She was your temporary teacher. She showed you the mirror of your weaknesses, the reflection of your attachment, the emotional dependence disguised as love. She didn't destroy your ego. She simply revealed where it still held sway. The most intelligent revenge is serenity. When she sees you well, when she realizes that your life flourishes without hers, a discomfort arises within her that cannot be cured by memories. Silence, once used against you, now becomes your signature. It announces your presence even when you are not there. The man who understands this does not seek revenge, but seeks ascension. And this ascension is silent, almost imperceptible, but devastating. Because in the end, the real game was never between you and her. It was always between you and your own reflection. Victory isn't her return, it's your awakening. It's the moment you realize that the attention you once begged for now comes from you. It's when you look back and feel nothing, neither anger nor longing nor pride, only gratitude for what contempt forced you to build. And perhaps at that very moment, if Machiavelli were watching you, he would murmur with irony and respect, "Finally, you have become your own prince." Her silence will cease to be a threat and will become merely a distant fragment of your story, almost an echo of something that no longer has the power to reach you. The human mind is driven by perceptions, not truths, and Machiavelli would know this better than anyone. He would say that power is a meticulous performance, a theater where appearances are worth more than reality. So while she believes that power lies in ignoring you, you build the opposite perception, that true power lies in not being shaken. It's an invisible war, made of gazes that don't meet and silences that scream. On the stage of human relations, the one who appears most stable wins, who transforms absence into an aura and calm into a sword. A 17th century diplomat once wrote in his diary that he never responded to insults. He just smiled and waited. He who rushes to justify himself, he said, has already confessed his guilt. This thought spans the centuries and fits the same principle that guides you now. Self-control as a form of mastery. Because seduction, like politics, is a cold war. Direct attack destroys charm, but strategy sustains it. The man who learns to wait without corroding himself becomes incomprehensible, and the incomprehensible is what fascinates. But is it really possible to maintain this control without becoming cold? This is where many fall. They confuse serenity with indifference, distance with contempt. The key isn't ice, it's dominance. Speak little, look less, smile as if you're keeping a secret. Mystery is the oldest form of power, and when she realizes that nothing in you wavers, she'll begin to seek the crack, first with curiosity, then with gentle provocation, and finally, with closeness. She'll test the ground that was once hers, trying to understand if she can still penetrate. And when that happens, be careful. Don't rush. Don't rush into her arms like someone returning to shelter, because that impulse is surrender disguised as victory. Machiavelli would warn you, never show the enemy how much it costs to win. Receive her naturally, as if you weren't expecting it, but also aren't surprised. Be cordial, but calm. Victory needs to seem accidental. That's what makes it inevitable. You might think the game is over at this point, but this is only the beginning of the more subtle phase. Power isn't simply gained, it must be maintained. Conscious indifference is the most sophisticated emotional instrument. It's not about coldness, but about precision, knowing when to be silent, when to act, when to disappear, and above all, when to allow the other person to miss you. The human mind is programmed to value contrast. It only perceives warmth after the cold, only desires what it has already lost. There's a curious experiment conducted by psychologists in Vienna in the early 20th century. People who were completely ignored in conversation began to feel anxious, but when the silence was controlled and accompanied by a slight presence, a brief glance, a calculated gesture, their interest grew. The brain confuses selective absence with value. This explains why mystery attracts and why predictability kills desire. Your serenity will be interpreted as depth and your silence as a challenge. But to what extent should power be maintained? To what extent does calm not become a mask? These questions are traps the ego itself creates to distract you. The answer is simple. Power is not the absence of emotion, but mastery over it. Machiavelli would say that the prince must appear just, even if he doubts, strong, even if he fears, steadfast, even if the world is crumbling. So too is the man who has learned the value of silence. He feels, but does not react, observes, but does not yield. And then comes the moment that cannot be rehearsed. The moment when she looks at you and no longer knows if she has lost you or if she never had you. It's a quick, almost imperceptible glance, but it is in that moment that the throne changes sides. Power changes hands without a single word, and you will finally understand what Machiavelli meant when he wrote that men judge more by their eyes than by their hands. Because the game was never about her, nor about love, nor about conquest. It was always about you, about the invisible mastery of your own mind. Remaining whole is your crowning achievement. But power resides in the realm of your urgency, and it is there, in that invisible point between impulse and control, that destiny changes course. Every time you resist the urge to react, you create a wall that protects and defines you. This is the difference between those who live to prove and those who live to dominate. The whole world watches, even in silence, and when it sees a man serene in the face of rejection, it doesn't understand, but respects. Respect is born of mystery, and mystery is born of calm. She can test again, she can try to gauge how real your peace is, she can reappear with light compliments, neutral messages, pointless questions. The weak man would believe he's won. The Machiavellian man understands that payback is part of the game, and that victory isn't in getting her back, but in remaining who he became without her. There will come a moment when your mind will waver. When she looks at you again, when she smiles with that same gesture that once disarmed you, you will feel the urge to return. And that is precisely where power will be tested, because true mastery lies not in pushing the other away, but in not losing yourself when they return. Machiavelli would say, the most dangerous enemy is the one who knows your weaknesses, and she knows yours. Therefore, control now must be absolute, not over her, but over the desire to relive what once was. But what if love still exists? What if there is, in fact, something true behind the silence? This is the subtlest trap of all. Power doesn't require you to kill the feeling, only to put it in its proper place. The heart can feel, but the mind must decide, because there is a kind of love that liberates and another that enslaves, and the man who understands this becomes invincible. The feeling that destroys you is the same one that teaches you to never again give in to despair. And it is this learning that Machiavelli would call virtù, the inner strength that transforms pain into strategy. She will realize. One day she will see you from afar, perhaps silently, perhaps laughing with someone else, and will understand without needing words that she has lost control. The same gaze that once sought to see your fragility will find tranquility, and this tranquility is the final blow. Nothing is more disturbing than realizing that the other has moved on, that your name no longer causes a storm. The silence that once imprisoned you is now your cloak. True power is discreet. It doesn't need to be noticed to exist. It's in the way you move, the way you speak, the way you don't react. It's in the way your silence weighs more than any word spoken by those who tried to hurt you. Serenity, when achieved, becomes magnetic. And the world, even without understanding, bows before those who don't need an audience. And when that day comes, the day you look back and no longer feel anger, nor longing, nor the desire to prove anything, you will know you have finally won. Not against her, not against the game, but against yourself. Because the man who learns to remain whole in the midst of rejection is the only one who truly controls his own destiny. And if Machiavelli were alive, he would not call you a disciple, but an example. For having power over others is common. Dominating yourself before them is royalty. Every relationship is a territory, and every emotion a battlefield where the most dangerous enemy has always been anxiety itself. The man who reacts surrenders command. The one who observes conquers. Because in love, as in politics, those who rush surrender power. So when you're ignored, don't run, don't explain, don't ask for anything. Transform her silence into fertile ground for your rebirth. While she forgets you, you find yourself. While she erases you, you illuminate yourself. Every second that pride tries to drag you back is a chance to prove yourself sovereign. Read, train, work. Take care of your mind, your body, your voice, your gaze. Improve everything that bears your name. Turn contempt into an invisible engine. Nothing is more attractive than a man who rises the moment they expected him to fall. And before you know it, time will have served justice. Because time always favors those who know how to wait. Machiavelli said that fate smiles on the bold, but the truly bold are not the impatient. They are the ones who dare to remain serene when everyone else is losing control. The moment will come when her name will cease to cause noise. You will think of her with gratitude, not pain. You will understand that power was never in reconquest, but in transcendence. And in that moment, when you look in the mirror, you will see the man you always wanted to be, whole, lucid, unshakable. The woman who ignored you didn't destroy you. She awakened you. It was the shock you needed to stop living to be desired and start living to be admired, even in silence. Machiavelli would end the lesson with a firm look and a half smile. He who masters his own emotions masters the world. Now that makes sense, because the world no longer revolves around her or anyone else. It revolves around your own axis, driven by your conscience, your calm, and your presence. If this message spoke to you, if at any point along this journey you recognized yourself, leave a comment, even if it's anonymous. Write what you feel, share what you've learned. Like this video so it reaches other men who need to hear the same. And above all, subscribe to the channel. There's much more to be revealed, and the next step begins now.